Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Ellen Wasfi of the League of Women Voters of Delaware, and I will be your moderator this evening. On behalf of the League and its co-hosts, the American Association of University Women Dover Branch, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Central Delaware Branch number 2028, the Central Delaware Alumni Council of the National Pan-Hellenic Council, and Restoring Central Dover. It is my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual candidates night for 2020. Let me stress that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any candidate or political party. Tonight's program will afford us the opportunity to hear a discussion of issues and opinions which will enable us to make more informed choices on election day. This evening, candidates for governor, lieutenant governor, and insurance commissioner for Delaware were invited to participate in a forum. The League of Women Voters is required to abide by certain regulations regarding candidates participating in these events, and we will not need those candidates tonight because all of our candidates are here. Let us review the formats for this evening's debate. The candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statements, outlining issues of particular importance to their campaigns. The League of Women Voters member, Dr. Phyllis Edamatsu and Carolyn Brinkley, will notify the candidates when they have 15 seconds left and when their time is up. In fairness to all the candidates, we request that they observe these time limits. The initial speaking order was determined beforehand through the method of random choice by the League of Women Voters Candidates Night Committee. Following the initial presentations, the candidates will have the opportunity to respond to questions sent in by the public via email prior to tonight's event, and questions posed by the League of Women Voters on its Vote 411 website. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question and 1 minute for rebuttal if desired, but they are limited to only 1 rebuttal per question per candidate. All candidates will have the chance to respond to each question posed to that office, and candidates running for governor and lieutenant governor will address the same questions. We ask that the candidates direct their comments to the viewing audience and not to each other. One final word regarding tonight's presentation. Organizing such an event would not have been possible without the conscientious efforts of civic-minded citizens who spend hundreds of hours planning and attending to details. Our gratitude goes to the League of Women Voters Candidates Night Committee, Dr. Mary Kay Eggers and Gail White, who contacted and followed up with the candidates directly, Joan and Fred Brookelman, who formatted and issued letters of invitation and debate guidelines to all the candidates, Beverly Jackson, who coordinated candidate responses and fielded questions from the public, and Dr. Mary Ann Coe and Chandra Owens, who contributed their technology expertise to enable us to host and publicize this virtual forum. We would also like to recognize the leadership of the event's co-hosts, Carol Jones, President of the League of Women Voters of Delaware, Janet Tomaszewski, President of AAUW Dover, Ann Smith, President of the Central Delaware Branch of the NAACP, Chandra Owens, President of the Central Delaware Pan-Hellenic Alumni Council, and Shonda Jackson, President of Restoring Central Dover, for volunteering their organizations to co-sponsor this event. And now, let me introduce the candidates for Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Insurance Commissioner, who will present their opening statements. We begin with candidates for Governor of Delaware, and we will begin with Governor John C. Carney, Jr., Democrat. Governor Carney, you may begin your opening statement now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your Governor, John Carney. Thank you for joining us tonight. This has been a difficult year for all of us, for Delaware and for our country. More than 200,000 Americans have died from COVID-19, including 688 Delawareans. Since day one of this crisis, our actions have been based on the public health science. We focus first on protecting lives and the health of all Delawareans. My administration and Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long have been working together to keep our community and our economy healthy. We've set aside $150 million in federal CARES Act funding to help Delaware small businesses rebuild and keep their customers safe. We've provided $40 million in rent and mortgage assistance because no family should lose their home due to COVID-19. From a budget perspective, we were prepared for the crisis. Working with the General Assembly, we built a $125 million reserve fund when the economy was strong before the pandemic. Those reserves are getting us through this crisis without a tax increase or cuts to important services. We're still funding the largest public infrastructure program in Delaware history. We're expanding broadband, cleaning up our drinking water, building new schools, and rebuilding roads and bridges. The choice we have in this election could not be more clear. Do you want more division and chaos? That's what President Trump and my opponent will give you. We need Delaware's own Joe Biden in the White House. He has the ability to unite our country and restore decency to the office. Here in Delaware, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long and I will stay focused on beating COVID-19 and the issues that matter to every Delaware community: good jobs, world-class public schools, and a great place to raise a family. This is not an easy time for all of us, for sure, but Delaware is a great place to live. And I know if we keep working together, we will come out of this crisis stronger than ever. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and all the other organizations that put this event on.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Our next candidate for governor of the state of Delaware is Julianne Murray, Republican. Ms. Murray.
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and the other co-hosts for hosting this and giving me an opportunity to introduce myself and give some insight into who I am and what I'm about. I am 50 years old. I am married to my husband, Patrick. I live in Seaford. I have no children. I'm a dog mom. Educationally, I went to the University of Arizona on an academic scholarship and graduated in 1992 with a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. 16 years later, at the age of 38, I went to law school while working, graduated in 2011, and opened my own firm in 2012. I am the managing partner of Murray, Phillips & Gay. I am a small business owner. I sign the front and the back of checks in my building. I entered this race because Delaware needs a fresh start and needs political balance. We need to get rid of career politicians like Governor Carney that are beholden to special interests and have lost touch with the citizens. I'm here because I want to bring Delaware's economy back. People don't realize that Delaware was predicted to have a recession in 2020 before COVID-19. We had almost zero growth, and we have chased big business out of this state with high taxes, high energy costs, and regulations. Governor Carney's shutdown has destroyed small businesses. As many as 37% won't reopen. I'm here to be the voice for all those small businesses that were shut down with no recourse and left on the vine to die. I'm here because I want to keep our streets safe. We need to get back, we need to have the back of our law enforcement and give them the tools to be safe. Citizens are afraid, and I want to help. I'm here for parents who have been given no option to send their children back to school full time, who have to make the hard choice of whether to stay home or work to supervise and to stay home to supervise that remote learning. I'm here for the students who miss their friends and just want to get back to school. I'm here for the regular citizens who haven't received their unemployment checks. I am a political outsider that cares about the forgotten citizens of Delaware and wants to get us back on the right path. So let's get rolling with questions so I can give you a sense of who I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. We do have one more candidate for governor of Delaware, Ms. Kathy DeMatteis, who is representing the Independent Party of Delaware. However, she is not here with us at the present time. If she does join us, she will have the opportunity to answer questions. We move now to the office of Lieutenant Governor, and our first candidate is Donyale Hall, Republican. Ms. Hall. You're muted.
Oh, is that better?
There you go.
Okay. Thank you so much for having this forum. I thank the League of Women Voters for giving us an opportunity to address your listeners. And I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, so I give my gratitude to the Panhellenic, and I served as first vice president for the Central Branch of the NAACP. So I also thank them and the other sponsors for this evening's event. I'm a businesswoman, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a Gulf War era veteran of the United States Air Force. I moved to Dover in 1973 when my father, who was also a veteran, was assigned at Dover Air Force Base. I'm a 1987 graduate of Cesar Rodney High School, and I've raised my family here. I have 10 beautiful children. That's my fun fact. 6 happily, I can say, have emancipated themselves from my wallet. I've got 4 full-timers that are in remote learning. 5 are graduates of CR. 2 are currently attending the early college high school. And I have 2 sons that are carrying on the family tradition of military service in the Air Force. I served in support of Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm as a communications and navigation system specialist. In 2008, I received my master's degree in business with an emphasis in finance from Wilmington University. I also served a number of years with the U.S. Department of Labor as a program specialist for Veterans Employment and Training Services, ensuring that veterans were being properly serviced through all federally funded statewide outreach programs. Currently, I have a general contracting company with a focus on community involvement and entrepreneurship to promote growth in the business community for women, ethnic minorities, and disabled veteran-owned businesses. I've served in a number of community organizations and veterans organizations as a board member. I'm currently the president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation of the state of Delaware. I'm running on a platform of equitable education, economic advancement opportunities, and effective government. I look to have a spirited discussion this evening on the issues that are most
Thank you very much, Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
I just want to remind you that the questions that we're going to have, that you're going to answer, many of the thoughts that you have now, you will be able to put forth for those questions. So we're not cutting you off.
No, I was done. Thank you.
We'll move to our next candidate for Lieutenant Governor. That would be Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall-Long, Democrat.
Great. Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with my fellow League of Women Voter members and my friends from the AUW and also NAACP and the others who are sponsoring this evening. As Governor Carney indicated, the past 4 years, it has been a pleasure to be part of a team that is about making Delaware stronger and healthier. And even during this tremendous pandemic, it has really been from day one about doing what I was raised to do best as a nurse, a public health provider, a wife of a military veteran. And that is really to touch individuals' lives, to make people better in the moment, whether those suffering from mental health challenges, those who are experiencing job loss, those who are having different challenges in the health lane, whether cancer. I know Governor Carney and I have worked hard over the years to make sure that everyone has that health. But in order to have that health, we have to also make sure we give back. And I know, being raised in the faith community, especially to those in Kent County and Sussex, it's always been about the least among us and making sure to those who much have been given, much is expected. And it has been a pleasure with Governor Carney to stand up every day and fight in our economy to make sure that we have good paying jobs and to ensure that to have a healthy economy, what do you have to have during the pandemic? A healthy community. And while championing those issues of health, the economy, and mental health, education is first and foremost. As a professor and a mom myself, we have to make sure children have a career that they can prosper. And doing all this with equity, making sure there is not discrimination, that there are not biases, uplifting. You know, Governor Carney and I are not about divisive, we're about unifying and making Delaware strong. And I am proud, as your Lieutenant Governor, to champion these issues and to make sure that we are uplifting. So thank you for tonight. I hope at the end you'll re-elect me November 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. We turn now to our candidates for Insurance Commissioner, and we start out with Commissioner Trinidad Navarro, Democrat.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Trinidad Navarro. I'm the Insurance Commissioner for the state of Delaware. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors for tonight's event. I greatly appreciate that. I'd just like to have a quick opening statement to tell you a little bit about myself. I work really hard to educate, protect, and advocate for consumers in the state of Delaware. I've worked with the General Assembly to pass many consumer-friendly bills, including putting an end to discriminatory practices and premium pricing methods. And as our state's only Latino and Native American statewide elected official, I'm very proud of that effort. We've codified protections of the ACA, and decreased premiums for insurance. We've implemented mental health and substance abuse coverage requirements, all while regulating home, auto, health, disability, workers' comp, life insurance, the whole gamut of insurance companies, helping people get the dollars they deserve when they file a claim, and so much more that won't fit into my allotted time. We've made progress, but residents are facing more challenges now than ever before. Our work is far from over. In recent months, our office has worked day and night to respond to the pandemic, making sure that people can afford the testing and the care they need, and that we have access to telemedicine. We've pushed car insurers to return millions of dollars in premiums and work with the governor's office to ensure that those experiencing financial distress wouldn't have their insurance policies canceled. Then when the tornadoes hit in Kent County and Newcastle County, we helped hundreds of people get the repairs they deserve and made sure their insurers lived up to their end of the bargain. We need strong leadership during COVID-19 with the impacts of climate change and things that are facing us here in the state of Delaware and across the country. And I believe I'm the person for that job. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Navarro. Our next candidate for Insurance Commissioner is Dr. Julia Pillsbury, Republican.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to attend. I've never been involved in politics, so why now? Why Insurance Commissioner? I have been a nurse and a doctor serving in the Army and the Air Force. For the past 30 years, I've had a private practice in Dover as a pediatrician. The most important insurance need for any family is health insurance. I have been an aggressive advocate fighting for my patients. I can tell you hundreds of stories of families having to fight insurance companies to pay their medical bills. The hours on the phone, the bureaucracy, the stress on whether a critically needed procedure will be approved. I've been on those phone calls fighting for my patients. No insurance company can sell any policy in Delaware without the insurance commissioner's approval. The rates, the deductibles, and the coverage provided. Premiums continue to rise, deductibles increase, and the insurance company red tape haunts families in need of care. Those medical insurance rate increases aren't going to doctors and hospitals providing the needed care. Those increases are going to the red tape of insurance companies. Their profits have soared. In Delaware, competition and choice has been essentially eliminated. A recent AMA study revealed that Delaware is among the 10 worst states for health insurance. I will bring my medical knowledge to make those rates fair. I will bring back competition so that Delawareans have a real choice. It was an honor to service my country, and it will be an honor to serve the people of Delaware. If you would like to learn more about myself or Trinidad, I recommend you go to the internet and explore us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pillsbury. Well, now we will turn to our questions for this evening, and we'll start out with the Office of Governor. This is a very simple question, which is really a continuation of your opening statements. What are your qualifications for office, and what differentiates you from your opponent? And we'll start out this time with Ms. Murray.
Thank you for the question. Qualifications and differentiate. I'm writing it down. I'm an attorney. And what I will tell you is that Governor Carney and I have spoken. We've done several of these now, and we are incredibly different. We have very different views on where Delaware is and where it should be going. I am a political outsider. There are those that, wonder if that qualifies me, and I can tell you that I have the skill set in order to do this. I am a small business owner. I am educated. I am a regular person that is in touch with what is going on in Delaware and is very, very knowledgeable at this point about the issues that Delaware is facing. Governor Carney is a career politician. And so when I talk about the two of us being very different, I think, my comment on that is that he is out of touch and is beholden to special interests and keeping his job, because that's what career politicians do. Delaware needs somebody who will actually focus on them, the forgotten citizens, and try to advance.
Thank you, Ms. Murray.
The timers in there. So
There will be more questions where you can pursue this thought.
that's fine.
We'll turn to Governor Carney for the answer to the same question.
We're in the middle of an unprecedented time with the global pandemic, and our state needs strong and steady leadership to address the very serious challenges that we've had. And I've been working over the last 7 months with our Lieutenant Governor and with our public health team to follow the science, to follow the recommendations of the White House Task Force and the CDC and the NIH, because we know that we have to do the things that are necessary in terms of face wearing, social distancing, eliminating large gatherings to protect from the virus from spreading in our community. And that's the kind of leadership. My opponent, on the other hand, wants to take the approach of the President of the United States and ignore the spread of the virus and to say that the solution is right around the corner. That's not the way that works. We know what works. What we're doing in Delaware works, following the science, following the president and Republican governors in other states does not work.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Turning the same question over to our candidates for Lieutenant Governor, we'll ask Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall-Long to answer that question.
For myself, it has always just been a pleasure, as I indicated in the beginning, to be one who has been called to service. My life has been about that. I've been surrounded by that. And having served in both the House and the Senate, that has given me a clear perspective. Lieutenant Governor presides over the Senate, has chaired the Board of Pardons, have that direct line of experience. But what's really most important, and something I believe Governor Carney recognizes, is that we show up and we listen and we get things accomplished. And that's what I'm known for. And I will continue to do that. As a woman who has experience working not only with diverse communities and populations, giving to the most marginalized and standing up for the things the League of Women Voters stand for: environmental justice, safe mail-in ballots, very important things that the GOP and others haven't supported and have challenged us on. And so I'm just pleased to have the opportunity to share tonight a little bit about some of my qualifications. You can read my bio, you can read my degrees, but it's most important the heart who's there to act for you.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Our next candidate for Lieutenant Governor is Donyale Hall, Republican. Same question.
Well, I think that what differentiates and qualifies me are probably one and the same. I speak from a perspective of those who have truly been marginalized, overlooked, and forgotten. And I think that it's epically important that we have people who have the ability to speak truth to power about what those needs are. And I've often felt that you can't represent me if you don't know me. And if you haven't come down among us and really walked among us to really be able to articulate what those needs are, you cannot effectively represent them. As a mother with children in remote learning, those needs need to be identified. As a business owner, those needs to be identified. And I think that I'm able to speak to those things, articulate the concerns, and be able to, in no uncertain terms, articulate truth to power on what those needs are for the community.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Turning to our candidates for Insurance Commissioner. Your question is, if elected, what are your primary goals for the coming year? We'll start out with Dr. Pillsbury.
My primary goal for the coming year is to get more affordable health insurance in the state of Delaware for everyone. The recent AMA study that I mentioned showed that we're in among the 10 worst states for PPOs, commercial plans, as well as the Affordable Care Act. And in fact, under the Affordable Care Act, we only offer one choice, and that's Highmark. I have nothing against Highmark, it's a great plan, but patients deserve a choice. And they need to have some competition to get their rates down. Last year, they had to give back 21.5 million, or this recently, they gave back $21.5 million from excess premiums collected in 2019. We need to get control of the medical insurance industry.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. Commissioner Navarro. You're mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Did it again. Sorry about that. Dr. Pillsbury mentioned the ACA, and I would just like to say that we lowered premiums last year by 20%. And you can call it whatever you want. I think if Republicans had Trump Care or American Care, and they're able to lower premiums by 20%, people will be lining up for it. And it's true that we only have one insurer on the ACA right now, but that's because of the Republican efforts to kill the ACA over many years. Senator Marco Rubio introduced a bill to stop risk corridor payments, which were part of the original architecture of the ACA. So what happened? These companies lost millions of dollars because of that money taken away. The market has stabilized here in Delaware based on this 1332 waiver that I'd like to explain in further detail as I have more time, but I think my minute is up.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Navarro. Turning back to our candidates for governor and lieutenant governor, the next two questions have to do with the electoral process. The next question is, following the 2020 census, election district boundaries will be redrawn across the country. What approach would you support to handle this process in Delaware? We'll start out with Ms. Hall this time.
I'm going to remember to unmute. Thank you.
Yes, okay, good.
Governor Carney and I had that same issue the last go round. We were on a discussion together. So he's smiling. I'm smiling as well. As far as that question is concerned, thank you very much for the question. I believe when I was posed that question prior, my thoughts were that establishing an independent body to be able to do that redistricting actually gives the opportunity for fairness to come in and doesn't end up being submitted to partisan bias. So I think I would support an independent body being able to assist with that measure.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hall. Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Yes, redistricting and the census was very important this year. I know Governor Carney had me lead our complete count commission, so we worked hard with the league. The census needs to be the redistricting process needs to be one that is transparent and where we have individuals having the selection of perhaps a redistricting commission, but we don't want to jump to that. We have around 10 states right now that are looking at that. As chair of the National Lieutenant Governor Association, I know we are looking at best practice models. In the state, I can share with you my first election that I ran and lost. Redistricting was not a good thing because it wasn't an open process. The next year, they actually redistricted around my backyard. So this year we had Senate Bill 27 where they're looking at this. And so I think we're going to take the best models available. We want to make sure that it is transparent, that it is accountable, and that the best steps forward for Delawareans be the maps of the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hall-Long, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Our next response will be from Governor Carney.
Yes, so redistricting is fundamentally a function of the legislative branch. So the question came at us earlier about if Delaware was to have enough people to pick up another congressional seat, whether the line would be drawn east and west or north and south. And my own view is that it is a legislative function. First of all, I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for her tremendous work and the team and the league and others who helped in making sure that we got an accurate count on the census so that we know where the people are. And and the population that needs to be represented. But I believe that that an independent group ought to kind of do some work and look at where the boundaries are, where communities exist, and come up with at least a proposal or some ideas, a framework to pass over to the legislature. But ultimately, it's a legislative function to be worked out in the Delaware House of Representatives and the Delaware State Senate. I always believe, though, that having citizen input in those bodies do that as a normal part of their legislative process is important.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
I'm going to be quick because when you're the fourth person and you pretty much agree with what everybody said, it makes life a little bit easier. Yeah, and the one thing that I would add to it is that I think that it's two things. One, we've got to be fair, and we need to make sure that everyone has a voice. And so I think the transparency, all of that, I agree with Governor Carney about the legislative function. And I'm going to save some seconds here so we can get on to other questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Murray. I'm going to stay with the office of governor and lieutenant governor because this next question also has to do with the electoral process. The next question is, this year, Delawareans can vote by mail due to COVID-19. Would you support continuing this option for future Delaware elections? Please explain your view and offer any possible changes to the current process that you feel are necessary. And we'll start out this time with Governor Carney.
Yeah, I think it's been great. And I'm proud to be part of a party that works hard to make sure that every voter actually goes and votes and exercises their rights. And that there have been, frankly, thousands of Americans who have fought and died to protect that treasured right of a democracy. And so it's incredibly important. It just simply works. It enables people, particularly in the circumstances we have now with a global pandemic and the risk, particularly to the elderly. We had the largest turnout in primary history back in September. We've already had 140,000 people vote by mail already. And so it enables people to vote on their own time and schedule. It enables them under a pandemic to do it safely so they don't have to worry about catching the virus or spreading it to someone else. It's just common sense, and it's a fundamental principle of our Democratic Party and of our democracy here in the United States.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
Thank you for the question. And it is, in terms of mail-in ballots, I was concerned and am concerned about it being passed for this year because of how it was passed. It was passed, in a Zoom General Assembly session with no public comment. And I think that it has been processed quickly. That said, I think that the Department of Elections has done an incredible job considering there's been 186,000 votes by mail. My issue is that Delaware had a fantastic absentee voting system, and mail-ins are being treated essentially the same. I worry about voter integrity. I want to make sure that those checks are being done. One of the things that we have to consider that people have been surprised about is that people who voted early have actually wanted to change their vote and can't. So, and I have also seen lately here in Sussex County, there has been robocalls that are actually telling people to stay home and stay safe. So I'm actually worried about kind of voter suppression, encouraging people to only do mail-in voting.
Thank you very much, Ms. Murray. Our candidates for Lieutenant Governor, same question. Ms. Hall.
Making sure my phone was quiet. It was ringing in the background. Thank goodness I was muted. I have been encouraged by the process for vote by mail. I think that we ought to always make it easy for people to vote and accommodate and work around that process. I know I have had a few concerns, especially during the primary, but I'm sure there are hiccups and can be worked out. There have been people who have felt that they were being disenfranchised. They would get, to the voting locations and they were having issues with their voter registration not being correct in the system. And I know that we are using these machines for the first time this year. The vote by mail has definitely given people the ease of access. There have been some considerably long lines that I've seen outside of the Department of Election too. So even though these things are in place, there are some lines and people are eager to vote and participate.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Yes, I absolutely support any way being a member of the League of Women Voters long before I was ever in office. One of the most fundamental things that we can do when I lived outside of Fort Myer every day, when I would look out at the graves with my husband, where we have to let people vote. And if getting ballots for persons with disabilities, whether it's an absentee, during a pandemic, I teach public health folks, we need people safe. We need people alive and well and not ill. So let folks vote early. And I agree with whatever process that we can have to protect our individuals. And the other thing that I'll say is that we have really great methodologies in place that are protections that do not allow persons who shouldn't vote to vote. Let's get over the fear. And to the GOP who brought the lawsuit, I thank the League of Women Voters who stood up with us to make sure that we won the right to have mail-in ballots. GOP fought that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Turning to our insurance commissioner candidates now. The next question is, as is true with many elected officials, insurance commissioners can bring their own projects or initiatives to the job. What would you do beyond the formal job description? And we'll start out with Commissioner Navarro.
I'll say that one of my most important things that we've done in my first term is House Bill 80. That was the bill that prohibited insurance companies from using discriminatory practices to figure out what you pay for your auto and homeowners insurance. They used your credit score or lack of credit, your marital status, your education, your employment. And this is something we got done in 2017. Fast forward to where we are today with the racial and social injustice that's going across the country. Other states are saying, you know, darn it, we have to do something about this. We have to stop these discriminatory practices. Well, we did that. We addressed that. And now states are coming to Delaware or asking Delaware how we got things done. What concerns me moving forward is the artificial intelligence and big data that insurance companies use now. They don't have to ask you your age or your race or your credit score or your education. Now they can find out through big data. They know, well, what websites you look at. They know what magazines you look at or you subscribe to. So they can come down and determine your information pretty easily. So I want to make sure that they cannot do that in a way that's unfair.
Thank you very much. Actually, the next question, you'll be able to continue your thought. So first we'll go with Dr. Pillsbury to answer this question.
Okay.
Thank you very much. As I indicated, my first and primary concern is health insurance. Health rates have been just outrageous. I've spoken to people who are paying $20,000 and $30,000 a year for health insurance. They're paying $1,200 a month for premiums. They have a $10,000 deductible. The typical family cannot afford the ACA rates that we have in Delaware. And I feel strongly that if we had some competition, we should be able to get that under better control. So that's going to be my first priority, to get a second health insurance plan to bid and to get some competition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. Actually, the next question is kind of like a follow-up on the question you just answered. So we'll just continue with it. Please comment on one thing the Insurance Commissioner's Office did especially well during the last 4-year term and one area that could be improved. And we'll start with Dr. Pillsbury this time.
Well, as Mr. Navarro indicated, they've made improvements in car insurance. They've eliminated discrimination, and I think that's very important. As far as his office and dealing with health insurance, I don't see where they've been effective. I've chaired the Medicaid Medical Care Advisory Committee for several years. Under federal law, Medicaid must offer patients a choice. Medicaid eligible patients have a choice of Highmark and an additional plan. I believe every patient deserves a choice, and the patients under the ACA don't have that choice.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. Commissioner Navarro.
Well, thank you. I would say that I already commented on HB 80 and discriminatory practices that we prohibited. And what my goal is with the artificial intelligence and making sure that, if they can determine that you look at People magazine, for example, that's not a big tell. But if you're prescribed to El Tiempo Hispano or Essence magazine, they can really determine the demographics of the people who are prescribing to those or subscribing to them. And my fear is that they can use that to redline people. So that's why I serve on a task force, the big data working group, to make sure that that doesn't happen. That is true that, in the perfect world, it would be great to have 2 insurers on the ACA. And remember, we had Aetna, but Aetna had to leave because of the efforts of Republicans to kill the ACA by 1,000 paper cuts. And no company will come to Delaware if they're losing millions and millions and millions of dollars like Aetna experienced. Now the market is stabilized, and I'm very confident that we'll be able to have another company come to Delaware next year.
Thank you, Commissioner Navarro.
Pleasure.
Back to our candidates for governor and lieutenant governor. The next 2 questions which we will address have to do with law enforcement in the state of Delaware. If elected, what measures will you develop and/or support to increase community confidence in law enforcement personnel? We'll start out with Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long this time.
Well, those who've heard me speak before say there's nothing more important than those who are supposed to protect us and to keep us safe, whether a nurse, a doctor, a law enforcement agent. We have to have relationships where individuals work. We are seeing divisiveness and horrific actions across our country. Discrimination institutionally is rampant, whether in law enforcement, healthcare, education. Like Delaware's son, you hear often our vice president and others speak about bringing people together. And that's what we have to do, having law enforcement and the community together. I certainly support, as I have role model, is the Behavioral Health Consortium, where we have not asked for defunding of police, but putting appropriate resources in place. I am honored to sit with them as we look at mental health, crisis training, getting resources where people meet, working with the green light work that we've done with our post-traumatic stress and our veterans. I could go on, I know my time is up, but it is about those things. And Representative Cook's law enforcement task force, we got to implement good recommendations that have come out of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. This is long, it's very long. Now, Ms. Hall.
Thank you for the question. I have been able to work very closely with our community police here in Dover. I'm happy to say that my youngest son serves on the Police of Chiefs Advisory Committee here in Dover. And it's efforts like his that I think that we need to duplicate across the entire state of Delaware, where the community has a voice and speaks openly and transparently and honestly about what those kinds of relationships really need to look like. We have a wide cross-section of people of that 9-member panel, to include even youth. And my son being a young Black male, we've seen where the concerns from the minority aspect of it are important. And it's difficult as a mom to talk to your child about, how you interact with police. So I think these candid conversations are much needed between the community and the police. And I would support any and every effort to make sure that we have that same type of relationship across the state.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hall. Turning to our candidates for governor, Ms. Murray.
Thank you. It's interesting. I've heard several times now the words about, being that I'm divisive and not for unity, and nothing could be further from the truth. Actually, a unifying candidate, and have had the ability. I am endorsed by the FOP. And I'm also in downtown Wilmington, talking to Wilmington, trying to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. There's going to be a march this Saturday about the crime and the violence in Wilmington. That is a silent protest that I am speaking at, and Donyale Hall will be speaking at. And we are going to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. The community has to believe that bad cops will be punished. That is how you get the buy-in. But they also have to believe that they're supported from the top. And they absolutely have that support with me, and they're going to have it with Donyale Hall.
Thank you very much, Ms. Murray. Governor Carney.
First of all, I want to unmute myself. First of all, I want to thank law enforcement officers across our state, the state police, county police, local police, for the very difficult job they do. You know, it hurts my heart when I see large portions of our population, communities of color, who don't feel the kind of trust that they need with law enforcement in their communities. The fact of the matter is that the law enforcement has to work very closely with members of the community in order to address law enforcement problems in those communities. And so what we need to do is continue the community policing efforts that have been going on in Delaware for the last 30 years. We need to adopt many of the reforms that Representative Cook's commission is going to come up with. We need to be more transparent about the use of force. I did an executive order clarifying the use of force with Delaware State Police. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to improve the relationship between all our law enforcement across the state and communities of color so that they can be working together more effectively.
Thank you, Governor Carney. The next question is
Excuse me.
intertwined with the question you just answered.
Ellen, excuse me, but Kathy Mateus is on here. She was a minute ago. I just wanted
I
to,
am.
okay. So perhaps you might want.
All right, well then you will have a chance to answer this question.
I think you would probably have to read it again to her.
Okay, we will, well, this is a new question, so we'll start fresh. How can we ensure the accountability of our law enforcement officers when they make mistakes? Very similar to how doctors and nurses are held accountable for their actions when it impacts the lives of those in their care. And we'll start out this time with Governor Carney.
Yes, so I think transparency is really important so the community understands the rules of engagement. And that's why the use of force changes that we made in the executive order are really important. I think it's important to develop a community advisory groups. They're important in connecting the community with law enforcement. I think it's important that individual law enforcement officers be assigned to communities so that they get to know the communities in which they work. That happens and has been happening with community policing across our state. I think body cameras are really important as a vehicle for transparency on both sides to just show what exactly happened in situations. And I think you find that body cameras and car cameras like the state police use actually are a prevention mechanism, preventing the kinds of actions that we've seen that are really inappropriate and criminal.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
Yes, I think that the law enforcement officer Bill of Rights is important and and ensures due process for officers. I think that making sure that process is handled properly is very important. I actually agree with the governor about the body cams as a criminal defense attorney. I can tell you that the volume of cameras and things that you get in discovery when you are handling a case is quite impressive. And I can also say that the law enforcement, I have been incredibly encouraged at how professional Delaware law enforcement officers are. And that I would like to, I think that it is important, as I said, to have the message that we're not going to close ranks and pretend that there aren't bad seeds. If there's a bad cop, that has to be dealt with. That will also help with the accountability. People will believe that we're doing, what we need to be doing.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Our next candidate is Kathy. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. DeMatteis?
Yes.
Oh, great. I would like you to answer that question. Do you need me to repeat it?
If you go ahead.
Did you say yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sure. How can we ensure the accountability of our law enforcement officers when they make mistakes? Very similar to how doctors and nurses are held accountable for their actions when it impacts the lives of those in their care.
We need a check and balance system. And one of the, I've actually written a curriculum for this. And my father was a Delaware State Police trooper. So growing up, I understood not only the stress that he was going through, but seeing there was an incident one time where my father apprehended somebody and we were right there watching everything unfold. He just went in for a pack of cigarettes and then, everything all happened. So seeing everything from both points of view, I kind of had an opportunity to look at things. The job of being a police officer is extremely stressful. And our breakdown in community, I'm even afraid. Like if I'm driving down the road and all of a sudden a cop is behind me, I could be doing 10 miles under the speed limit and I'm still going to slam on my brakes out of fear. And it's a fear that I don't even rationally have. So if I have that fear, what do other people have in that fear? And I think we need to do a lot of work to basically mend the relationships that we have with the community and with our police officers.
Thank you very much. I neglected to mention, I don't know if you knew it previously, but the response to each question is 1 minute, and we would like you to please stick to that limit. And very often the questions will, other questions will enable you to answer the question you didn't get a chance to complete answering. And I also did not mention that Ms. Mattias is representing the Independent Party of Delaware. We'll move on to our candidate, the same question, our candidates for Lieutenant Governor. And we'll start out with Ms. Hall.
Well, I think that is an excellent question. The police is an organization, and every organization has its bad apples. So when we have misconduct in any profession, you have to deal with those issues as they come about. So on a case-by-case basis, I believe that we evaluate what has happened and execute the appropriate response for whatever has happened. If it's been misappropriate conduct, then we deal with it based off of what the incident dictates.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
As stated before, you mentioned nurse and doctor. No one should be harmed at the hands of someone who's supposed to keep them safe. We know that whether a police officer, a nurse, doctor, people go into public service to care and to serve. When we have those egregious actions, what we saw with George Floyd and the murder, we have to act and we have to make change. And that's why I've been pleased to work with many of you on Justice for All, those initiatives, and working also with our Delaware Black Legislative Caucus. And looking forward to, as our Governor Carney indicated, the report from our joint task force that's going to be bringing law enforcement and the community together to make recommendations. We have to be held accountable for our actions. There should not be these disproportionate indiscretions. And we do know that racism and discrimination is across all different systems. And we've got to step up, take advantage of this window of opportunity to really come together and make our community stronger and healthier together. Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Turning to our insurance commissioners again. The question is, how has the insurance commissioner's office responded to the challenges of COVID-19 this year? Do you foresee any permanent operational changes based on what has been learned from the pandemic crisis? Start out with Commissioner Navarro.
Make sure I'm on off mute. Well, I can tell you that we've done a lot of things to address COVID-19, starting off with the non-cancellation of policies due to non-payment. We worked with the governor's office in one of his emergency orders to make sure that we got that done so that people wouldn't lose their policies because they couldn't afford to pay their premiums. But one of the most important things that we did was telehealth and telemedicine. This was something that was always in Title 18, the insurance code, but it was also in Title 24, which said that it had to be audio and video. So we changed with the help of the General Assembly and the governor's office to make it the option to have audio. And what that did was, people who didn't have a primary care doc or were disabled, couldn't leave, or had children at home, or just couldn't get to see someone for primary care, they now can through telehealth. And I'd like to see that become a permanent part of Title 18.
Thank you, Commissioner Navarro. Dr. Pillsbury.
I am not sure that my understanding of the policies in the insurance commissioner's office, many of the employees have been allowed to work from home, which I think is valuable, as long as they're still accessible. And my understanding is that they have been. And as Mr. Navarro mentioned, allowing people to continue their policies is very important. Telemedicine brings with it its own issues. There are many good aspects of telemedicine, and if you have someone who's been well controlled or doesn't need to be physically seen, I think doing telemedicine is fine. But if you have someone who's acutely ill or has a serious medical problem, doing it by conference call is not going to be adequate.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. I have another question here on a completely different issue for the insurance commissioners, candidates. If elected, do you foresee yourself making any changes to minimum required auto insurance coverage, particularly in the realm of personal injury protection coverage? And if so, what would those changes be? We'll start with Dr. Pillsbury this time.
I don't think we need to change the coverage that currently exists, but I think we do still have members of the community that don't have insurance, and that is an issue. We need to make sure that insurance is affordable for everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. Commissioner Navarro.
Well, PIP coverage covers people for, injuries sustained in auto crashes. And it really helps people immediately. They don't have to wait necessarily for an auto insurance claim. But it does many other things. It also helps people with salary. So if you're out on, on a PIP claim and your health insurance or health coverage is being taken care of with that small amount of PIP coverage, and then also help with your salary as well. So we've been criticized for the PIP on both sides, whether it's the trial lawyers or the insurance companies, as far as the dollar amounts or whether it's needed in Delaware. Other states don't have private injury protection insurance, but it's essential as far as I'm concerned, because it helps in many more ways than just helping people get to that initial treatment that they need. So I support it and will continue to support it in Delaware.
Thank you, Commissioner Navarro. Turning back to our candidates for governor and lieutenant governor, we have several questions that have come in dealing with race relations in the state of Delaware. So I'm going to start with the first one. Do you agree with those advocates who accuse the state of racially fueled mass incarceration? Please explain your view. And we'll start out with Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Issues of incarceration are actually something that is important in the capacity of the lieutenant governor. We chair the board of pardons. We know, and I know from being in the House and Senate previously, and a nurse who takes her students, University of Delaware students, into our prison facilities in the community, that we have to continue to do what we've done in Delaware. And Governor Carney will share with you, we have had challenges, absolutely, but we have to continue to lower our numbers, and we've done that. We have far too many Black and brown individuals incarcerated in this state, and I stand proud as chair of the Board of Pardons when I came to you in 2016, working with Governor Carney, when I said we're going to stop having a 3-year wait list for commutations and 2.5 years for pardons. We've been able to really move that along. That's just one simple example. I would love to be able to talk longer. My time is up, but we really do have to address and put in programs, mental health, additional educational tools and services to lower our rate.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Ms. Hall.
In Delaware, Black and brown people comprise about 23.5% of the total population. Our prisons are occupied by 60% Brown and Black population. Within a 3-year rate, 65% return to incarceration. We have a serious problem in the state of Delaware as it pertains to sentencing, when it comes to being able to look at equivalent crimes without equivalent time sentences. And I think that that is something that needs to be scrutinized very heavily and dealt with. It's long overdue. It's been going on for many, many decades. And this is not something that just occurred within a COVID environment. It's something that we have had to deal with and has not been dealt with effectively.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Governor Carney.
We have far too many Black and brown neighbors that are incarcerated in our state. And the fact of the matter is that we have to go back to the root causes of the problems that lead to that incarceration, criminal activity as teenagers in the early 20s. And that's the educational opportunities that too many of our Black and brown children don't have. And that's why the most important priority for me as governor has been to the opportunity funding, to make sure that there are more resources and adequate resources going to schools and to teachers and classrooms with disadvantaged children and English learners. If we're able to get those children to read on grade level by grade 3 and do math at middle school to prepare them for high school, they'll be able to graduate to go right into the workforce productively or on to higher education. But that opportunity funding at the early age, preschool, elementary school, and high school is so critically important, and that'll help with this problem.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
Well, I'm now officially torn because I want to talk about the question about mass incarceration, but now Governor Carney's gone to education, so hopefully we'll get to education. Here's the reality. I am a criminal defense attorney. I can absolutely speak to the mass incarceration and that minimum mandatory sentences, which actually go back to
Lost audio.
I'm sorry, somebody's speaking. When Senator Joe Biden led the fight for the Truth in Sentencing Act. So what has happened is we have an unequal impact. Mandatory sentences, as Ms. Hall said, as Donyale said, is that, has led to 60% of the African-American population being in the prison system, which is 3 times higher than their actual population in Delaware. 70% reoffend. So we absolutely have to deal with this minimum mandatory and the unequal impact to, based on race. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about education in a later question.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Ms. DeMatteis. Are you there? Are you unmuted?
There she is. She's up at the top. I see her.
Unmuted. Is it there?
Yep.
You're good now.
Okay. We have a lot of laws on the book that are literally designed to trap people into this system. So if we're going to fix this system, we have to go back first to some of the laws that are on this book or on our books and rewrite these laws. One of the things that, just in the beginning of October, we had, I can't remember the exact number, I think 20 some odd children and 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds in a fight in Wilmington. And so we need programs, after school programs. We need more skate clubs, more, there's not even like a roller skating rink. There's literally no activities for any of these kids to do inside the city of Wilmington that could be occupying their time and that could be used for educational measures. So these kids are virtually like they're running all around. There's no guidance. There's no clubs for them. There's no things, to help them get the education that we need. There was money that was raised for a skate park along the corner where literally over $20 million was raised, and that money had gone missing. So where did that money go for that? There's so much stuff that needs to be corrected for this.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeMatteis. We will probably get a chance to look at this question again or at greater length. we'll start out with the next question, which deals with a similar issue of incarceration. Do you believe additional measures are needed in Delaware to assist citizens exiting the criminal justice system? Or are sufficient measures currently in place, such as access to jobs and affordable housing? Ms. DeMatteis, I think you can continue your thought at this question. Ms. DeMatteis, are you there?
Lord, what if this is, I'm not a fan of Zoom. But yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I do believe in that we need exit programs. I've put together a curriculum where we not only help people at the end of their sentences so that they can come on out, but I have a program put together that they literally will be able to go into, which covers their housing. There's people who have been in jail for a long, long time. They're not going to be ready to just walk out into the world. The world has changed from when it was that they came back in. So there's so much integration that needs to be done. And there's so much healing on the mind, body, spirit level that needs to be done that is not getting done inside of the prisons. The education that they need is not happening. So there needs to be these exit programs. And I literally wrote a plan for it. And I have a curriculum in place for it to just move right into it.
Thank you, Ms. DeMatteis. Governor Carney. Governor Carney, are you unmuted?
Yeah, I think I
There we
am
go.
now. I have a little trouble with my mute button. 1 week after I was sworn in as governor, we had a riot at James Vaughan Prison, and we've made incredible improvements, increasing the pay of correctional officers, bringing more in, improving the conditions in the prisons. But we're certainly not doing enough, and we're not doing it effectively enough as to make sure that the prisoners are ready to return to the environments from which they came, so they can be more successful. And so we've had, using a federal grant, we've had a group called the Delaware Correctional Reentry Commission that worked hard, came up with a series of recommendations, which we could talk about at greater length. But essentially, it is to make sure that every inmate, when they come into the prison, has an assessment of their educational and training needs and a plan for their confinement, and then the return through probation onto the streets and communities across our state. We need to do a better job of making sure that they're better prepared to return to those communities than they were when they committed the offenses that brought them to prison in the first place.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
Number one, absolutely, we need to be doing more for reintegration. Again, I can go back to my experience as an attorney. I've talked to many clients who are not ready when their sentence is up. We need to be doing vocational training in the Department of Corrections to get job skill training that will allow them to transition, not just through work release, but when they're done with their sentence and work release, being able to go get a job. We need to have better substance abuse treatment, and we need to work on housing, because a lot of them do not qualify for housing because of their record. But I also want to bring up the Governor Carney brought up the Vaughan prison riot. That was born out of hopelessness of inmates. But the reality is that Sergeant Floyd, the teams were told to stand down. And that was that is a huge failure on the part of Governor Carney that I think people need to remember.
I think that requires
Rebuttal. Okay. Rebuttal now, Governor Carney. Go ahead.
That's just simply not true. Commissioner Phelps made all the decisions throughout that whole process. Period. End. Those are the facts. Those are the facts.
I've talked to way too many witnesses, people who have called me about this. Absolutely.
Okay, we've got 2 rebuttals on this question now, and that's the limit for these candidates. So we'll move on to our candidates for Lieutenant Governor, and we'll start out with Ms. Hall.
So we have an imposition of sanctions on ex-criminals outside of the prison, like removing, their access to public housing, welfare, job opportunities, and even the right to vote. This type of thing prevents reintegration and it really encourages the recidivism and may actively promote crime as a result of it. So if you think about the thought that could really go into creating those exit strategies that create an environment to help people reintegrate into society successfully, that is a win-win all the way around, especially for the families that are impacted by the loss of their son or their father or their brother. So being able to attack this problem only benefits society as a whole.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Well, it's a multi-pronged issue. Myself going in both as a professor and nurse and leading with our governor, the Behavioral Health Consortium, whose work was selected by Pew Charitable Trust, one of 3 states across America, for the efforts that we are putting in to prevent recidivism, whether it's trauma-informed care, having our mobile substance abuse mental health van at the prison soon as someone exits, and holding that person's hand. I spend a lot of time on the streets as a public health nurse and working, helping persons have peers. We have put in place not only substance abuse and mental health treatment, we're working with education reform. We still got a lot of work to do, but as I talk to families almost daily, whether I'm down by the port, whether I'm down in Georgetown, it's about what we have done and putting those resources so that individuals do not go back having housing, jobs. But folks, it's up to us. And thanks to the League for your work, your studies that you have done, helping us work with the justice system to eliminate fines that reincarcerate people, et cetera. So I'll stop, I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. The next this is a final question that came in regarding race relations in the state of Delaware. So we're going to keep on moving in this direction. Do you view Delaware as a state where there is racial inequality? If so, please explain how it can be reduced or eliminated. Start out with Ms. Hall this time.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Do you view Delaware as a state where there is racial inequality? If so, please explain how it can be reduced or eliminated.
Well, I can say from very personal experience that there are pockets of people that still exist in the state of Delaware who are racist. And I can share an experience within the last 3 weeks where I was in an office and I was being introduced as the candidate for lieutenant governor. And this gentleman was in his 80s and he was Caucasian, and he said, "I'm sorry, I won't vote for her because she's Black." So, depending on who you speak to about this particular issue, yes, there are inequities and inequalities that still divide us racially. It's unfair. It's a reality though. And how we handle it is what makes the difference. We have to have culturally competent people come to the table and have open, honest, transparent conversations about how we move forward and address the proverbial elephant in the room and be able to find common ground solutions and push a pathway forward that's positive and creates unity among all races.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Yes, one thing that has always motivated me to help the marginalized are often when we are with individuals of our Black community, Indigenous community, and you'll often get elected officials talk to people, outreach to them when it's convenient, or a slogan or rhetoric. I can share with you, whether it's Governor Carney, myself, when we are with the communities who are marginalized, we show up, we listen, and we act. And we must continue to do more around these issues. With inequality is not the right phrase. It is inequity, real difference. We have to provide those additional resources for our Black and Latino and other marginalized communities, because inequality isn't enough. We have to, in schools and housing and healthcare, recognize. And that's what I'm so proud of working with this administration, is working whether in the city of Wilmington, in Georgetown, in Dover, making sure that we're addressing these. And so again, thank you for that question, and thank you to the League, the AUW, the NAACP, and the sororities, all of you for addressing those issues.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Ms. DeMatteis. Are you there? Are you unmuted? No, you have to press your mute button, your unmute button. We still can't hear you.
She put her glasses on.
Can you unmute yourself?
Unmute. Okay.
There you go.
Oh, this is fun. I have biracial grandchildren, and there was nothing more heartbreaking than when we had our grandchild at the beach in a sandcastle building contest, and she clearly won, and the older gentleman, the older white gentleman literally ignored the fact that she was even participating in. And what I found was so amazing is the amount of other people who literally stood up and said to that man that that was not acceptable. And that was one of the most beautiful things that I've seen. So I am seeing where things are starting to get better, but what we need to do is hold people accountable who behave in that, that's not right. And we shouldn't allow people to be able to hurt other people in that way, especially considering a lot of this, like in that particular case, it was geared towards a child, to a 9-year-old child. And people if you're 80 years old and you're still conducting yourself that way, something needs to be happened so that you learn that that's not how you treat other people. We have a huge issue with not knowing how to love.
Thank you, Ms. DeMatteis. That was very eloquent. Thank you very much. We'll continue with Governor Carney.
Yeah, we certainly have racial inequities and inequalities in our state, and there's a lot of things that the governor can do to promote a diversity and inclusion. It starts with his or her cabinet. I have probably one of the most diverse cabinets in the history of the state, and that's really important. It sends a signal to the public that everybody's included and everybody's at the table. I nominated the first African-American to the Delaware Supreme Court, and have used seven opportunities and appointed 6 African-American judges to our judiciary, which advances the cause of inclusion and equality. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it comes down to education, having that strong foundation. I'm the son of 2 educators who taught me that that was the most important thing that we can do in society, is provide young people with the education they need from preschool to elementary school, middle school, and high school to be successful in life. And that will solve a lot of and address a lot of our problems of inequality in Delaware.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
Unfortunately, there is inequality, and there is, and when Donyale was talking about what happened to her, it saddens me. I mean, I live by the treat people as you would like to be treated, and I live that way, and I don't care if the person I'm talking to is black, brown, white, it doesn't matter, and I lead by example, and I want other people to do the same. I do think that Governor Carney is correct that that education does make a difference in that. I think that we actually have had racial inequality in education, and so when he's talking about the opportunity funding and the disadvantaged students and that funding went there. He did settle a case, and I had the opportunity last night to bring this up, and it's my comment is that it was too bad it was 22 days before the election that he settled the case, and his comment was, I'm a lawyer, I should know that cases have to settle, that's how it was scheduled, but the reality is it could have been settled at any time, and so I'm glad for the disadvantaged that they are going to get the funding, but suspicious of the timing.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Rebuttal, Governor Carney.
Yes, please. The reality of that settlement is it builds on things that we've been doing for the last 3 years in terms of investment in early childhood education. It includes that. In terms of doing better by the children in the city of Wilmington, it includes a focus on that. In terms of English learners, which there are scores of them across our state, it builds on investments in that. Reading specialists, a math specialist for all children from disadvantaged backgrounds, and additional resources, emotional support services for those children, building on, adding more resources, a focus on finding out what works and doing more of that, and not doing what doesn't work. And so it really builds on that. It's the timing was the court's timing, frankly.
Thank you, Governor Carney. We will turn now to our insurance commissioner candidates. Do you feel, was there somebody that wanted to say something?
I'm sorry, I coughed. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you feel that any areas of insurance are especially vulnerable to fraud? And if so, what steps would you take to prevent it? Commissioner Navarro.
Well, I think all areas of insurance are vulnerable to fraud, especially auto insurance. You know, I'm the chair of the anti-fraud task force. Was elected by my peers across the country. And we take a look at all types of fraud that occur and share that information, whether it's happening on the East Coast or the West Coast. And that's how we learn to address these types of issues. But I also serve with the Attorney General's office, the FBI, and a couple other agencies for the COVID anti-fraud task force. So we have seen some things like fake cures, things like DNA tests, and where scammers will say, we'll test your DNA, don't worry about it because your insurance will cover it. And then when it turns out it's not covered, then the individuals can see a large bill. So whenever you have a major catastrophe, whether it's a earthquake or a hurricane or a pandemic, you see fraudsters come in. They usually start online and they start impacting people's lives. And that's what one of the best things that I can do is provide my experience in fraud investigations.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Navarro. Dr. Pillsbury.
I agree that all aspects of insurance are vulnerable to fraud. And personal injuries, whether they're workman's comp, car accidents, are very vulnerable to fraudulent claims. They're challenging. Unfortunately, there are some physicians who are not as ethical as I think all physicians should be, and they contribute to the problem. And I would definitely take the actions available through the office to have fraud investigations done when they're brought to my attention.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. The next two questions for our governor and lieutenant governor candidates have to do with the issue of climate change. Do you feel that climate change has affected life in Delaware? If so, what steps, if any, should be taken to lessen its impact? Governor Carney.
Climate change is a serious existential threat to our country, our state, and nationally. We need international agreements. President Trump took us out of those international agreements. We need national action, and the Congress has not acted like they should, and we need actions at the state and local level. And that's why the state of Delaware joined the Climate Alliance. We have focused over the last several years on reducing carbon emissions from electricity generation. We've actually made really good progress eliminating carbon emissions from electricity generation by converting from coal to natural gas, not renewables, but we're going to do more of that. We really need to focus now on making sure that we can build the infrastructure for electric vehicles. If you just look at the television, any of the automobile manufacturer ads that you see on TV now are all envisioning electric vehicle future, and we need to have the infrastructure to make that happen so we can reduce carbon emissions from the transportation sector. We're already buying electric vehicles at DelDOT, and we need to do more.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. DeMatteis. Are you unmuted?
Yeah. Okay. I do believe utilizing hemp technologies is an incredibly wonderful way that we can have a renewable source. I believe using turbines in the Indian River inlet is another way that we can produce enough electricity and we can reduce our carbon print. There's so between those two, I think those would be an excellent source. One of the other things that I was looking at is possibly, I mean, our rail system doesn't really go all the way down to the beach. So implementing something like a rail system where we have a high-speed line that can move quicker and more efficiently is something I am looking at.
Thank you, Ms. DeMatteis. Ms. Murray.
Yeah, we want our environment to be safe for our grandkids, and Delaware has done a lot. There's a lot on the books, protecting the environment. One of the things that in my view, we have to balance though is the cost, and so we have the coastal zone and the Conversion Act that allows or encourages companies to come in and private companies to come in and do an environmental cleanup, which we need, and retrofit and start using, but it has so many regulations to it that it is going to be impractical because they have to get a new permit at the end of 20 years. And so the cleanup that needs to happen isn't going to happen. So I would encourage and say that, we need to be considering the cost benefit analysis and make sure that we're doing practical environmental regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. For our Lieutenant Governor candidates, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Yes, climate change is real and we have to address it. I have seen, having served with the League of Women Voters on your Environmental Health Committee many years ago, the real impacts this is having on our health. And that's something that hasn't been mentioned today, whether clean air, clean water, or impacts on cancer. As our governor indicated, whether it's our RPS standards, making sure we are absolutely addressing the issues that affect us daily. And we can do things together. In 2005, when I was on the House Energy Committee, we had like 1% renewable electricity. Our goal is getting there by 2025, maybe around 25%, and we'll go higher with those standards. But again, having witnessed sea level changes, as a farm girl from Sussex, whose father constantly was worried about sea level rise, these are real issues that affect real Delawareans. And that's why I'm proud our Department of Natural Resources, working with Governor Carney, have really put steps in place to give us a roadmap to the future so that we all have grandchildren who have clean air and clean water. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Ms. Hall. You're muted, Ms. Hall. We can't hear you.
Governor Carney and I have a problem. I'm so sorry. Anyway, there's been a lot of good, robust conversation. The only thing that I would really add to this is the fact that when we talk about the renewable portfolio standards, the current expectation to 2025 was to meet that threshold. I'm concerned that we need to find a good balance of the cost of it. It was set to be capped at 3%. It's at 19%. Those kinds of things are passing along an enormous change in people's electric bills. I'm one of those people that pay about half my mortgage every month in energy cost. So I would like to make sure that whatever mechanism we are using to protect our environment is done so in a consumer-friendly manner to make sure that our already overburdened people trying to recover in this economy aren't strained even further with the extra cost of energy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hall. For our insurance commissioners. States.
Ms. Ellen, can I didn't mean to interrupt you, but climate change, there's a real insurance component of that as well. So I was wondering if myself and Ms. Pillsbury, Dr. Pillsbury, could have a chance to address that as well.
Would you like to address? There is another question on climate change, and if our insurance commissioner candidates would like to look into it, we can do that. I can give you that question, and we can all try to answer it. And some of you already have.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to address this because climate change is real, and there is a real insurance component related to climate change. You see, we're having these 1,000-year floods in Delaware every couple of years. I mean, think about it. When was the last time we had 2 tornadoes within a week of each other like we did a few months ago? This is really happening. The National Flood Insurance Program is out of money. For folks who live in the coastal areas in Delaware, it's difficult to get flood insurance. So they have to use surplus lines, which is a much more expensive prospect than flood insurance. So we need to look at other ways to bring companies in. And I just had a recent conversation with a European company, Flash Floods. And what they do is they allow individuals to purchase insurance for a certain dollar amount. So in other words, if you want to cover the contents of your home, or you want to cover the structure of your home, you can buy insurance for a certain dollar amount and then get immediate payouts using technology now that they can use, that they don't have to come out to your house. And I could explain that more, but my minute is up.
Thank you, Commissioner Navarro. Dr. Pillsbury, would you like to tackle that question?
Well, I must admit that I don't really have no experience with climate change in the insurance industry. I understand Mr. Navarro's comments that the rates are going up for flood insurance and so forth. I think we need to look at those things, but I feel that I need to learn more about it.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury.
Thank you.
But we do have another question for you.
Okay.
States routinely perform studies to determine which cost-saving measures can be employed in their respective markets, especially in the area of health insurance. Have you reviewed any such studies, and what cost-saving health insurance initiatives do you believe will be helpful to Delawareans, particularly in the area of COVID-19, where remedial and preventative initiatives will certainly be necessary? We'll start out with Dr. Pillsbury this time.
I believe that first we need to have competition for health insurance. As I indicated at the beginning, the AMA has done a recent study and Delaware was in the 10 worst states in every category: preferred PPOs, traditional insurance, HMOs. They were overall second worst in the country. We need to address the health insurance overall. The rates are going up, the deductibles are increasing, and people can't afford it. And more people are giving up their insurance. I've talked to many people that are paying $20,000 and $30,000 a year for health insurance. That's just not affordable for the typical Delawarean. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. Commissioner Navarro.
Well, I'll say that really the driving factor is for their cost for health insurance is the cost of care. The cost of care has gone up exponentially over the years, and I know that many private practices are struggling, but really it's the hospitals that are driving that cost. And I can show you 100 studies to prove that. So how can we do, what kind of cost containment can we do? Well, we can look at what we did with workers' compensation insurance. You know, we put in a fee schedule that has led to 4 straight years of reduced premiums. I just announced a few days ago that workers' comp came down for the 4th year in a row. So the state of Maryland put in a fee schedule. It's something we should look at in the state of Delaware. And we're also working on the Office of Value-Based Healthcare Delivery, which will follow the state benchmark to try to lower costs and increase, I think Dr. Pillsbury would be happy about this, but increase payments for primary care physicians, because we know that they're the ones who are being squeezed most by health insurance in the state of Delaware.
Thank you, Commissioner Navarro. Going back to our candidates for governor and lieutenant governor. What else can we do statewide to keep the number of COVID-19 cases low and slow the spread of the coronavirus with all the information we know now? We'll start with our candidates for Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall-Long.
I was hoping I would get that question first. As a public health faculty and epidemiology professor, folks, it's simple. Your 3 W's. We have to listen. We don't have a vaccine. We don't have a treatment. And unfortunately, our communities of color and our marginalized communities, the homeless and others, are greatly infected. 3 W's. Wash your hands, watch your distance, wear a mask, the most important thing that we can do. Certainly chairing with Secretary Bullock at the direction of our governor, the Pandemic Resurgence Advisory Committee, which some of you participated in. If you didn't, please visit our roadmap. Governor Carney and others, we did not have a pandemic playbook. We did the best we could for our business and our health systems, but most importantly, those greatest at-risk populations. So in the meantime, take seriously the advice that is being given to us by scientists. Make sure that you are doing these 3 Ws, have your flu shot. This Thanksgiving and holiday, do the Zoom events. So I could go on, my time is up, but thank you for throwing that to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. Ms. Hall.
Successfully unmuted, yay. Thank you, Governor Carney. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long. I agree with the Lieutenant Governor about, doing the minimally invasive things to keep the spread from happening. However, I do, as a mom with the remote learners, I'm looking at some of the schools that were private schools that were able to successfully reopen and have in-class learning, that have clearly demonstrated that they have found a way to be able to move us forward in spaces like education. So I'd be very interested in seeing if we could replicate some of those things so that we could reopen our schools. It's sad for me to watch my 10-year-old crying at the table because remote learning is not working. It's sad for me to hear the parents who are not able to get the wraparound services for their children who have learning disabilities. So I want to be able to see that we move forward from this pandemic as quickly as possible, as well as the observances for the health concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Governor Carney.
You're right. We have learned a lot. We've learned what works and what doesn't work. And we've learned that leaders have to lead and they have to set the example. President Trump is not leading and he's not setting the example. Joe Biden is leading and setting the example. Wearing a mask, keeping appropriate social distancing, communicating to people that we're all in this together. Wearing the mask is a small sacrifice to keep your neighbors safe, particularly our elderly mothers, fathers, grandmothers, and grandfathers. At some level, it's really pretty simple. And it's to get everybody, not to make this a political issue. It's not about Democrats and Republicans. It's about public health. Following the public health experts, striking the right balance. You gotta have a healthy community before you can have a strong economy. While you have a strong economy, they come hand in glove. You can't do sacrifice one for the other. And that's the approach that we've been taking in Delaware. And if I can be elected again, that's the approach we will continue to take.
Thank you, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
One of the things that we've talked quite a bit about in previous debates is what we're talking about stopping. And we obviously do not want people to die from COVID-19. And and stopping the spread is difficult. It is a virus. We also need to stop the fear, and we need to be smart. I think people have learned about social distancing and are much more cognizant of it. But we also have learned what doesn't work. Okay, and one of the things that does not work is we have to protect our most vulnerable, and our most vulnerable are our nursing homes. And under Governor Carney's direction, COVID positive patients were sent into nursing homes. And he is saying that it's because they couldn't stay at the hospitals because he was afraid that the hospitals would be overrun, but we were never close to that. So I think that, lesson learned, let's protect our vulnerable population and be smart. Responsible people can act responsibly.
Thank you, Ms. Murray.
I think she mentioned my name and challenged something
Just let Ms. Mateus answer the question, and then we can have the rebuttals.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Ms. Mateus.
Okay, yes.
DeMatteis.
Yes. I believe utilizing more homeopathic remedies. We know that vitamin D is something that has been very, very effective in dealing with COVID-19. So from looking at, there's so many different alternatives that we've not even literally looked at. So utilizing all of those things, and a lot of the reasons why a lot of people have fallen victim to this is because their health wasn't there to begin with. So we need to start looking at how are we treating and being more preventative. So and on the whole scale, like even past COVID-19, like more preventative measures along the whole gamut of things. But we know that there's when it comes to wearing the mask, we know that for some people that they can't do this. There's people who are handicapped who have people who with breathing issues and things like that. So we've got to look at this whole, we have to look at this whole entire thing and how can we come up with solutions that really address the bigger issue. And the bigger issue is just that we are not
Thank you.
healthy
Thank you,
as
Mr.
people.
Mattias. I think we got the message. Rebuttal, Governor Carney.
Yes, the fact of the matter is that the hospitals, we were working together as a big team, and the hospitals were being overburdened with patients, some of which needed to be released. They didn't need hospital care. So they came to our team and they said, where can we release some of these elderly patients to? And so we set up and approached nursing homes, state facilities, that then emptied out. We didn't put anybody at risk. That was the whole idea, was to free up space in the hospitals so others could come in. So it wasn't a decision that I made independently. It was something that the hospitals requested, and that was the action that we took. And it was the right thing to do, frankly. When you're dealing with a global pandemic, facts matter. Communications matter. If you're going to get everybody to do things, particularly things that they might not want to do, leadership means doing the right thing, following the facts, following the science, and getting it done.
Thank you, Governor Carney.
And
Ms. Murray.
Thank you very much. And, and the reality is we all looked at the numbers, what was given to us. I understand not all of it was given to us, but we were, the hospitals were not overburdened with patients, and we never got near that number. And 400 out of 688 deaths in this state have happened in long-term care facilities. That's a fact.
It's a complete non sequitur, though.
We can only have one rebuttal per question per candidate. I'm sorry. That's the rule. We'll move on to our candidates for insurance commissioner on this question. One issue which can affect insurance rates is the cost of prescription medication. Do you have any specific plans on how you would work with federal legislators to control these costs so that citizens are not forced to suffer undue financial burdens simply to afford the medications they or their family members need to survive? Commissioner Navarro.
Well, in 2018, we worked with the General Assembly, and the governor signed this bill into law that addressed PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. And pharmacy benefit managers are sort of the go-between between the manufacturers and the pharmacists. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's unregulated. So I joined commissioners across the country to put together this bill that the governor signed into law that forces PBMs to register with the department so that we can see where the clawbacks and where the rebates are going, because it's a lot of money that is involved with these PBMs that's causing our prescription drugs to go up. So we'll be able to address that by looking at their finances, and be able to address that by looking at their market, through a market conduct, to try to lower prescription drug costs for the state of Delaware and follow what other commissioners across the country have done.
Thank you, Commissioner Navarro. Dr. Pillsbury.
I agree. Cost of prescription medications has become outrageous. And it's very challenging for patients to fill their prescriptions. I often am asked to change an antibiotic that I think would be best suited for a child's infection to something less expensive. You asked what we can do with the federal government, and I think this is a federal problem. The nation needs to do something to address the high cost of health insurance. Whatever we can do at the state level, I support, but I think we need a national effort as well to regulate the insurance companies. We should not be paying what we're paying for prescriptions.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury.
Thank you.
Now, our last question for everybody is more of a philosophy of holding office. And we'll give everybody 2 minutes to answer, just go wild. And it's basically, if elected, what are your primary goals for the coming year? And what motivated you to seek or continue in this office? So you can combine these questions into your philosophy of holding office. And we'll start out with our insurance commissioner candidates. Dr. Pillsbury.
Thank you very much. I became interested in running for insurance commissioner because I have been dealing with health insurance for 30 years. I've had employees. I have helped my families in my practice. I've gone from a $2 and a $5 deductible when I started my practice to patients having a $10,000 deductible. And health insurance has just become unaffordable for the typical patient in Delaware. Unless you work for a large industry like the state, you cannot afford health insurance. And I can't tell you how many people have come to me and voiced that concern. We need to do something to get that under control. And that's my primary goal. I want to look at all of the insurance that the state is, the insurance commissioner's office is responsible for, particularly insurance that impacts small business. I was a small business owner, and I can tell you that we paid a lot for various insurance policies. So I would like to be able to look at all of those and get them under better control as well. Small businesses are suffering right now, and we need to do whatever we can to help them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pillsbury. Commissioner Navarro.
Well, thank you for the question. I'll just start by saying that I am not just a consumer of insurance. I am an insurance regulator, and I have been doing this for 4 years. My goals really are to lower premiums, which I've done 2 years in a row with workers' compensation insurance, 4 years in a row with workers' comp, 2 years in a row with health insurance on the ACA. We have returned money to people. Every person on this panel who drives a car who has auto insurance saw either cash back or rebate or credits for their future premiums for the auto insurance. And as an insurance regulator, that's what I do. I make sure that insurance companies fall within their loss ratios so that if they turn too much of a profit, they have to give money back. And Dr. Pillsbury mentioned this earlier about the $21.5 million that came back to people on the ACA through Highmark. This was simply a function of the reinsurance program that we put into place 2 years ago. And we knew premiums would come down, and we estimated it would be 19%. Well, it's been 20 over the last 2 years. But what we didn't know, it would have such a profound effect that we would have to rebate money back to people. That has never happened in the history of the ACA. And so there's folks on the individual exchange and on the small group market saw $21.5 million come back because Highmark was above their medical loss ratio, which is 80%. So as a regulator, not just a consumer of insurance, I recognize that, I've addressed that, and I return monies to people. So you say, there's that expression, love what you do what you love. And I have been helping consumers and people my entire adult life. And I would be honored to have another 4 years to continue to help you all as your insurance commissioner.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Navarro. We turn now to our candidates for governor and lieutenant governor. Same question. We'll start out with Ms. DeMatteis.
Perfect. The reason why I want to do this is I built a curriculum to help people to achieve their goals in life and to obtain a higher quality of life. And when I reached out to my elected officials several years ago and said, that I built products and I built a curriculum and I really wanted to work with the state, I was dismissed. So I was like, well, how come nobody wants to help the people? So I restructured what I was doing, laid it out in a different plan, and was working on achieving those goals in another direction when the pandemic hit. And the more I looked at everything, the more I was like, well, I built a plan. I literally called it the stimulus package. So I was like, you know what? There's no better time right now than let me move forward. Let me change my gear again and let me do this as governor. And that's what I'm doing.
Thank you very much, Ms. DeMatteis. Governor Carney.
I've lived most of my life here in this great state. I grew up in Claymont. I was one of 9 children, Ann and Jack Carney. They were both educators. They taught all of us children that the most important thing that you could do in life was to serve other people. I went to college. I thought I wanted to be a football coach, athletics coach, coached and played lacrosse, played 3 sports in high school, 2 sports in college, love sports. Decided that government and public service was the road for me. And I've had just a wonderful career serving the people of our state. First with Newcastle County as Secretary of Finance, Deputy Chief of Staff for then Governor Tom Carper, 2 terms as Lieutenant Governor, an unsuccessful run for governor in 2008. I learned more from that than anything, I think, 3 terms in Congress and now 1 term as your governor. Experiences matters. Trust matters when you have a situation like we do with a global pandemic. You have to get people to do things, simple things, but things they may not want to do for the good of the community and others, for the protection of their neighbors. We are a state of neighbors. We look after one another. That's the way I approach this job. I've got the experience matter, trust matters. And I've got both the experience and the trust of the people who've elected me. I've run 7 times now, statewide. They know that I'll do what I tell them I'm going to do, and I'll follow through. They've never let me down, and I've never let them down. It's been a great run for me as a public servant. I don't consider myself a career politician. I can consider myself a public servant, and I love serving the people of our great state. And I know if we pull together, we follow the science, we set the right example as leaders, we'll get through this and we'll be stronger than ever. And I would appreciate your vote next week on Election Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor Carney. Ms. Murray.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I think that we need a fresh perspective, and I think that we need to restore balance. We have been under one-party rule in this state for a very long time, and it is time to bring balance. But it's not just R versus D. It's we the people versus career politicians. I understand that Governor Carney says he doesn't consider himself a career politician, but the reality is he has served for a very long time, and he has lost touch with the everyday Delawareans. And so what I bring to this is I am in touch with the everyday Delawareans, and from a philosophical standpoint, I want to have. I came out with a restore balance plan where I want to be able to do a listening tour where I'm in each of the counties, doing town halls a couple times a year. I want to be on the radio so that I can take the calls. I've been on the radio before. I'm comfortable with it. I think you have to be in touch with the electorate. I think that there are things that we need to do. We need a sunset commission to look at how our spending is happening. We have to boost our economy. We also need to quell the fear. There is a tremendous amount of fear right now, and people, but it's not just fear of COVID. We have people that are afraid to leave their homes right now because they're worried about unrest, because they don't feel like they're worried. And I think that 155 shootings in Wilmington, 26 deaths this year. That's a statewide problem. I want to be the bridge that can get the communities and the officers and start bringing this back. We are a small state. It is beautiful how small this state is. And I think that with some fresh perspective and somebody that is down to earth and can relate to the everyday citizen, we can make, Delaware's already a small wonder. We can be fantastic. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Our candidates for Lieutenant Governor, we'll start out with Ms. Hall. Muting.
There we go. I caught it. As a businesswoman, a wife, a mother, a U.S. Air Force veteran, and a very strong community advocate, it's really been painful for me to watch the steady decline in our state. I really feel that private citizens here have been diligently seeking means and ways to really address the distress of our impoverished communities, our disengaged youth, and ways that are meaningful and impactful. And I think that it takes a perspective of someone who has been hurt and helped by Delaware policy to really be a voice and a champion for change for the socioeconomics that I find very woeful here. I find that we need to have more transparency and measurable outcomes in our government to make it more effective. I think that we need to really explore equitable education and bring more vocational opportunities to our children. Currently, we have mostly pathways just to college and not so many pathways to the trades. I think that we can do some things that close our achievement gap by making sure that our spending in education asserts that as the priority. I want to see that we have economic advancement opportunities for our small business community. The startling number is that 37% of our small businesses have closed in a COVID environment. We need to have people who have strong business acumen to be able to speak to an economic development plan that not only benefits Wilmington, but the entire state of Delaware. Job growth, economic development, those are the things that will have a direct impact on lowering our crime rates in the state of Delaware and giving people an opportunity to prosper. So please consider me for your vote for November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hall. Lieutenant Governor Long Hall.
It has been a long haul of a night, hasn't it? That happens all the time. Just call me Bethany. It's so much easier that way. But in sincerity, as I started tonight in the conversation with my friends here, I really am committed to helping make Delaware stronger and healthier. I came to the dance of policy back as a young 20-some-year-old with the League of Women Voters. And I found that at that time, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I learned really hard in taking care of the most marginalized for 3 decades, working with mentally ill, homeless veterans, taking care of them, that we had to have people at the table who understood not only healthcare, but how that builds into the administration of the health industry or jobs. And that's what it's all about, folks. Re-electing me and working with Governor Carney, we are really about making sure we are there. We show up, we listen, and despite what some others might have said tonight, we really act, roll up our sleeves. And it's about caring from the heart. That is what public service is really about. It's not about titles. It's not about what makes people feel good in the moment. It's making sure our children have food on the table, solid education, that they are protected with the best public health standards. During COVID, we are having to make sure that those things are in place. It's easier than it looks. I promise in this next year to continue to fight not only for healthcare and equitable solutions, but my passion for the mentally ill, those experiencing an opioid epidemic. We are at a crisis point. We put a lot of measures in place. The Behavioral Health Consortium that we put forth is one of the top in the country with the first overdose system of care, but there's a lot of work to still be done. And I'm so proud working with Governor Carney to stand up for small business, minority-owned business, women-run business. As the national chair of Million Women Mentors, which is co-chaired with Iowa Republican governor, we're fighting for young girls of all backgrounds to have career paths in STEM. And so I will close by saying, if you elect me, I will continue to be there, work hard, show up, listen, and act on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Hall-Long.
Got it.
Thank you all for your closing comments. We have now come to the close of tonight's program. Let me thank the viewing public and the candidates for your involvement in this, what has definitely been a learning experience. Our gratitude also goes to the League of Women Voters, AAUW, the Central Delaware NAACP, the National Pan-Hellenic Council, and Restoring Central Dover for supporting this example of grassroots democracy. These debates can be accessed tomorrow on the League websites and Facebook. These debates are being recorded using Zoom. No public is in attendance. Recording of these events may not be used without the express approval of the League of Women Voters. The League will only allow audio and/or video of this forum to be broadcast in its entirety, except by media reporting on the event. Audio and video of this debate will be streamed on League websites and Facebook tomorrow, October 30th. And most importantly, please remember to vote. by Tuesday, November 3rd. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Fantastic
Thank you.
job, Ellen. Fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you all. Thank you all. No, thank you. It was amazing. I learned so much from all of you tonight. Thank you for your incredible performance.